Hello, everybody. We are live again, Thursday lunchtime, 12 o'clock. Thank you if you're here for the ride. So we are live on the Green Umbrella Facebook page, on the Green Umbrella YouTube channel, and on Christina's LinkedIn. So you might notice that she's ditched us again.
Unbelievable.
It's becoming a common occurrence now, isn't it?
I know.
It's outrageous. We should ditch her.
Start our own breakaway show.
Yeah.
She can do Christina lunch next week instead of live lunch. Just her.
just Christina.
Yeah.
So no, Christina's tied up in meetings. It is another chock-a-block week full of coaching calls and webinars and that kind of thing. So yes, I'm sure she'll watch back and keep a little eye on us and what we're doing. But for the moment, it's just us. So if you're here as well, do pop a comment in the box, and if there's any questions as we go along or good comments, we'll pick them up. So how is everybody? I feel very squinty. I'm in a different room, you might have noticed, and it's quite bright. I should use my sunglasses. But how is everyone this week?
Good, thank you. Yeah,
Yep,
usual.
Winning?
Nothing. Yeah, same as. Busy.
Always
as per.
Good. So,
How are you, Amanda?
I'm fine, thank you for asking. Actually, we don't always check in with each other and say, how are you, do we? So
No, well, we do in our meetings, but
Yeah.
not really. People must on live lunch think we all hate each other.
we're rude to each other, don't we? Cool. So what's new this week? What have we been working on? Emily, I know you had some things in mind, but Jane, did you have anything, or what have you been working on this week? I know we've had some new starters as well in the GU crew.
Yes, we have. We've got a Kickstarter girl, and she started on Monday, and I've been doing some training with her, and yeah, I think she's enjoying herself so far, and she seems to be doing really well. So yeah, that's taken up a big chunk of my week this week. But I have also got a couple of little bits I wanted to talk about as well. Twitter have just allowed you everybody now to share their tweets to their Instagram stories. I think that only launched yesterday or the day before or something. It was in testing for a little while, and I actually had it on one of my accounts while they were testing it. But it's just a little button at the bottom. It looks like the one where you're sort of downloading stuff. You click on that and it says, would you like to share this to your story? It goes straight into your Instagram account. Obviously, be careful to make sure if you've got multiple Instagram accounts that you're actually logged into the right one before you start. And then it just makes a nice little story of your tweet, and you can add obviously the usual stickers and all the rest of it. But yeah, it's just quite nice. It's rolled out to everyone. It possibly might only be on iOS at the minute, but it's finished its test anyway, and it is quite a handy thing. So
Yeah, definitely. So that's
this week.
So no more needing to screen grab. So you
still need to screen grab if you need to do a post out of it. This only goes to stories currently, and there are a few apps that let you do a screen grab for a post. One called Twimmage. Can't think of any others at the minute, but what
What did you do then?
What's going on there, Emily?
Sorry.
My ring light. That's so embarrassing. My ring light got caught in the wire on my leg, and then literally just
So professional.
Emily's set's falling apart. So if you're listening to this rather than viewing it, things collapsing all around her.
Ignore me. Carry on.
It's become the Green Umbrella Outtakes show today.
Yeah.
The bloopers.
I think it's going to fall again. I'm really nervous now. Hang on, there you go. Oh, my eyes water.
Right, control yourself.
Sorry.
Jane, you were saying, so you can do screen grabs on some apps.
Yes, there's a couple of apps. Like I said, there's one called Twimmage. I can't think what the others are called at the minute, but if you Google apps to share your tweets to Instagram, there's a few out there. So, and they make just, again, a nice little square image that you can then share on your Instagram. So yeah, that's my news for this week.
Cool. And it's quite unusual to have, because they're not, Instagram and Twitter are not linked, they're not owned by the same people. So that's quite an unusual, well, maybe integration isn't the right word, but quite an unusual link or bridge between the two platforms.
It is. I think you can share them to Snapchat as well, but again, it's why they chose those, I don't know.
Who uses Snapchat these days?
Never used it, to be honest. So.
Cool. Okay. I know we were all a bit kind of, almost haven't had time to really catch the news this week. What with new starters and just, you know, heaps of work going on. But Emily, what's been going on in your world?
Hello. First of all, I'm sorry about that. You know, when you were at school and you did something, and then you're sort of in the classroom, you've got to try really hard not to laugh. So I felt like, anyway. So I've been listening to more podcasts. And I did a bit of research because I've been thinking I don't know, podcasts really get me thinking about everything. Obviously, I listen to a lot of different podcasts about a lot of different topics. But one of the things that I was thinking about is obviously, from a business perspective, how you can use podcasts to their advantage, also the benefits in podcasts for that, and sort of the rise in their popularity and why people enjoy listening to them, really. So I found a quite interesting article, and I've written a few bullet points down. So in terms of sort of, I guess, why podcasts are beneficial, and I believe why they've become so popular. Obviously, you can reach an on-the-go audience, which, to be honest, obviously wasn't quite so relevant over COVID. But now I think as people are starting to go back into the office, I know Jane and Mark have been in the office quite a lot this week. People are starting to get a little bit more on the go now. So obviously they can listen to it in their car or whatever. So that's quite useful. Most people have access to it if they have sort of a smartphone or an iPhone or something like that. Some people, like myself, prefer listening over reading, and they also appeal to both genders, which I thought was quite interesting. I don't know if there's particular stats anywhere, Maddie, you might know this, about whether, say, blogs or things like that have specifically appealed to a certain gender or not. I don't know, but I thought it was quite interesting that they made that point.
Yeah.
And then obviously how you can use them to your advantage as a business. So discuss hot topics and trends that will resonate with your audience. Position yourself as an expert. So discuss something you're knowledgeable about. They're a good way to build trust with your audience. So which I thought was quite an interesting point that I hadn't really thought of. But when people hear your voice, I guess it's kind of like radio. You feel like you know that person and you build that element of trust there. And I guess, although obviously podcast is an audio, but I guess the same way that we talk about eyeballs in photographs, it's building that trust there because you can see them. I guess when you can hear them, it's almost the same thing. Weirdly, I know when I sort of listen to podcasts now, because I listen to the same podcasts over and over, and I do sort of feel like I know these people. It's really strange. It's like if I were to meet them, I'd have little jokes with them and stuff, and it's just a bit odd. But I guess that's one thing. And then repurposing podcasts as a blog. So again, I know we always talk about how the benefits of repurposing content. So obviously you can repurpose podcasts as a blog. It says make sure everything is relevant to your target audience and be consistent as well. So again, I know we say obviously consistency is key across everything in terms of social media, but that also applies to podcasts as well. So yeah, I just thought it was quite interesting, really. As I said, I think I've been listening to a lot more podcasts recently, and I do find them quite interesting. And it's strange. I'm the sort of person that can't listen to music whilst I'm working, but weirdly I can listen to podcasts, and I don't know how. I don't know if it's almost like white noise. I was thinking, maybe it's like being in an office, and you know when you can overhear conversations and you can still focus on that conversation but focus on what you're doing at the same time. And yeah, I don't know, but I don't know, because Jane, did you say you don't listen to any podcasts, do you?
No, I mean, I've listened to Christina's occasionally, but no, I don't have a regular one that I listen to. To be honest, I probably would give it a try though. So if anyone has any recommendations, I'll give it a go.
Mark's got sports ones.
Yeah, I mean, I do listen to quite a lot of things, and there's a couple of bits that you said there. So the thing about being on the go again, that's almost my go-to in the car, is listening to podcasts. So, you know, again, being back in the office for a few days gives me more opportunity to listen to things. But the other thing as well that sort of I suppose relates to it is certainly some of the podcasts I listen to, they've developed more of a community thing around the podcast as well. So it's more rugby and sport things, but you know, they've maybe got like Facebook groups that are linked to the podcast where you can obviously go in and discuss sort of rugby things or things that have been on the podcast. But then from their marketing point of view, they're building a brand, but also then maybe selling merchandise and things through the Facebook group, or a link to the website and things. So it's that holistic thing again. It's the podcast might have started it, but then it's building out to a sort of a bigger kind of marketing sort of area, really.
Imagine if someone going through your house. Who's that?
So, my beloved husband has had a hernia operation this week and is not supposed to be really moving around at the moment.
Snap out whilst you're alive.
Yeah, basically. He's just disappeared. I think, I don't know whether he's just gone to get some fresh air or do something, because he's already bored. So he's just wandered out the house. So
he can listen to some rugby podcasts.
We have to go and get him and steer him.
You can't chase him. Get back in.
Oh, what are you thinking? What are you doing? Don't pick anything up. But not too bad. He's just got a very painful belly. So yes, I'm on nurse duty this week. So hence why I was a little bit late to our pre-chat, pre-live conversation. But I should get him working on a podcast or listening to one.
Yeah.
So I have found some quick stats. So
that was fast.
You want data? I give you data. So apparently, as of last year, there were over 15 million podcast listeners in the UK. So it's just in the UK. It's not just a US thing. So that is, a whole heap. Yeah. And they are predicting that will grow steadily. So podcasts will probably continue in their popularity. So with forecasts predicting close to 20 million listeners by 2024. Podcasts are widespread among young audiences, with close to 40% of UK listeners aged 26 to 35. So sometimes when we say younger audiences, so last week, for example, we were talking about TikTok. Younger audiences are kind of in my head, when we talked about that, it was the teens, almost tweenies. Yeah. So whereas that younger audience in podcasts is 26 to 35, it's not that young, it's people who are potentially homeowners.
Yeah, it's not that young, Emily.
Not that young, Emily.
You're doing it right.
Don't think you're, the baby. You're a grown up. You've got commitment.
You have a mortgage, do I?
Yeah. Well, that's the point I'm trying to make. So sometimes when we say younger audiences, we think, well, they don't have the decision-making power. But in that age group, people are they're out, they're working, they've got money to spend, they could have homes, they could have mortgages. So, we're all saying, so 3 out of 4 of us on this live are fairly regular listeners to a podcast. So, Paul Green has mentioned that a couple of things. So Christina did a great article for the Business Bulletin magazine on should you start a podcast. So we can perhaps share the link to that. You can see the link in the Facebook chat. So there's some good suggestions in there as to why you would do it. He's also recommended Drunk Women Solving Crime as a superb podcast, which is not one I've listened to.
I've heard about that one, though. I've heard that was quite a good one as well. I can't remember. Is it Catherine Ryan? Does she do that?
She does Telling Everybody Everything.
Oh, okay.
Which is one I listen to. That's one I listen to fairly regularly. So,
see, I listen.
So it's quite graphic in some ways. So she's, well, as you can guess by the title, Telling Everybody Everything. She gave birth to her second child last week, and there was some fairly involved storytelling going on there.
I think that's why I quite like it, because it goes back to that thing, doesn't it, about sort of the personal element of telling stories and building up that relationship with your customers or fans or listeners or whatever. And I guess that's maybe why it's almost like sort of, when was it, like 2013, 2014, and like the massive rise in YouTubers, and he's back.
Yeah, he's back. Just gingerly wandering back through again.
Sort of the massive rise in YouTubers, and I guess sort of coming back again to that thing of people like to be nosy and people like an insight into people's lives. So sort of the rise in reality TV, and then it was the rise in YouTubers and vlogging, and now it's sort of the rise in podcasts, and how again it's sort of that personal element and feeling like you know somebody, because these stories that a lot of people tell on podcasts, actually, like some of them you wouldn't even tell to your closest friends, that they're putting them out there and broadcasting it to millions of people. So yeah, maybe it's something to do with that as well. And I guess as picking up the point that Mark made about the marketing element, so I listened, I don't know if I can say it on here, but Chris and Rosie Ramsey's podcast, which is called Shagged, Married, Annoyed. And it's really funny. And a lot of people write in with really personal stories, and they share their personal stories. And it's just a bit of a laugh, really. And they sort of joke about things. It's not really taken too seriously. But they have... so they call their listeners the Smars and Dars. And then they have a tour that they're going on now, which I think was supposed to be obviously pre-COVID, and it's been postponed. They've got sort of, what do you call it? Branded
merch.
Merchandise. They've got sort of like branded T-shirts and everything, and it is building that community there, and people feel like they're a part of that community, and they sort of, you talk to other people, and if they listen to the podcast as well, it's kind of, you've got that bond there, and you can have sort of the jokes about things that they've talked about, and other people don't, if they don't listen, they don't know, and it's kind of, as Christina always says, sort of the fear of missing out element as well, because it's, they're not involved in the private joke, and then they're like, oh, that sounds quite funny, actually, I might listen to that. And that's sort of how they build up so many followers and listeners, I think. It's like maybe similar to the sport podcast that Mark listens to.
Yeah. It's like anything with your business. If you're thinking of a business concept or the why behind what you're doing. So the why would you have a podcast? Why would you have a business? Knowing your niche, knowing your audience is key. You kind of map that out beforehand. It's kind of, well, who am I talking to with this? What's the aim? And actually, it'd be really interesting if we could almost interview Christina to talk about, why, because her podcast, so Christina Talks, is not just about marketing.
No.
Is it? It's about, business owners, interesting people, their personal brands. So she's interviewed everyone from kind of an Olympic open water swimmer. So Fran Housel's an open water swimmer, decorated Olympian, to Mark Ormrod, who is veteran. I think he's a double amputee, but is just incredible. It's so inspiring in the kind of challenges and feats he's undertaken since. So she covers a really broad spectrum, and not necessarily what you would think, because you might think it's all marketing chat. It's not. It's about kind of business owner, what it's like kind of working on your own, what it's like being your own brand. So, and she's always been quite clear about who she's talking to. So
I guess that's a different part of Christina's brand, though, isn't it? Obviously, she has got Green Umbrella and she's got marketing, but actually a big part of herself is the entrepreneurial side of things. And obviously she's the business owner. So she's got that, I don't know, she's got something in common with these other people that sort of are similar in terms of they're very entrepreneurial themselves. So they can have a lot to talk about, and it's sort of focusing on that other target audience, not just purely the marketing side of things.
Yeah.
I think it's quite interesting, though. And I also think it's so for me personally, I quite like listening to sort of it's strange. So I listen to the Shagged, Married, Annoyed podcast, which is obviously quite funny and is not serious at all. And then I listen, which I think might be similar to the podcast you listen to, Amanda, or sort of along the same lines, is it's called Private Parts, and it's by I think I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, but it's Jamie Lang and Francis Bull from Made in Chelsea, but they interview tons of people, loads and loads of people, and sort of get them to talk about their lives and their upbringing and loads of things, sort of covering mental health and their businesses and their success and how they've got to where they are. And I guess that one, although it's funny and they have sort of banter and jokes and that sort of thing, actually they do talk about serious topics as well, and I quite like that balance there personally, whereas I guess other people might prefer to listen to more serious podcasts. I listen to it more for sort of in the background kind of thing. I think if it were to be something that was extremely educational or something like that, I might not be able to multitask as much, because I would find that I would need to concentrate on that a bit more.
Yeah. I think we've had this discussion about Clubhouse as well, that some of us are able to have it on in the background, whereas I personally can't. If I'm listening to a podcast, I'm walking the dog or I'm in the car, rather than, because I can't concentrate on the two things, otherwise I need to be fully tuned in. So Nick's commented saying that she listens to the same podcast as you, Emily, and loves it, but looks a bit weird when she's laughing to herself in the car.
I know. They always say that. They always say people sort of write in and say how they just burst out laughing on the bus or something. It would definitely be me, because some of the stuff they come out with is hilarious, to be fair.
Brilliant.
Very rude, but hilarious.
Okay, so here's a marketing-y business question. Have you, any of us here in the studio, or anybody listening and along for the ride with us today, have you ever bought anything as a direct result of listening to a podcast? So whether that's kind of booked tickets for their shows, or bought a product that you've heard advertised, or has it ever compelled you to go and do something?
Not me, because I don't listen to them.
I haven't, but I don't know if that's just the type of podcast that I listen to. I feel like if it was something, again, like, not to pick on Mark, but something more sporting related, and they were talking about that, would kind of make me think, oh, I really want to go to that, or I haven't been to see that in ages, or something like that. Whereas I guess what I listen to, like I said, they interview a variety of people. So today the one I'm listening to now, it's interviewing what's his name? He's a chef. Hang on, bear with me 1 second. Tom Kerridge.
Oh, Tom Kerridge is great.
Yeah, and it's quite. It's
to the next level.
I mean, it's making me think that I want to go out for dinner. So possibly, but I'm not sure that's a direct result.
Yeah, I think so. You know, and for many podcasts, it's often because there's a live event as a result of it. So, like you said, Chris and Rosie Ramsey have got a tour. Drunk Women Solving Crime have got live events. Catherine Ryan's got a tour. They might have a book out. So it's all that kind of, like you say, it's the equivalent of doing a blog or just general social media that kind of drip feeds that message. So, you know, I'll probably get Catherine Ryan's book or ask for it for Christmas. So it's just that kind of drip feed of that message, as you say, and something you can recommend. Another one I listen to is Off Menu, which is James Acaster and Ed Gamble. Where you kind of pick your perfect menu. So there's a thing for everyone to ponder on. So if you were going to starter, main course, it's kind of a fictional restaurant, what would you pick for each meal, which we won't go through now because that will just turn into their podcast. But it's a good one. They often get comedians and famous faces on to talk through, which is really funny. So I think they had Tom Kerridge on, and he was like, right, I'm going to order 12 pints of lager. And he was kind of, well, it's a fictional restaurant. I can do what I like.
I think I think the other thing about podcasts is that I think that's kind of a prime example, really, is that there's so many out there now that you really have to think outside of the box in order to make it different or to make it stand out. And for me to think like that podcast, it's like if I thought of that idea, I would have thought, well, how can we drag this out into a podcast? You know what I mean? Surely it's a 5-minute conversation. But actually, I guess if they really do delve into it and they sort of think about the reasons why you would pick that and then start talking about random stories, maybe from their childhood or something like that, it is, again, it's that personal element, and then people become more interested automatically.
Yeah, definitely.
I think
there's also I think there's also a crossover between something Emily said earlier about the YouTube thing as well. And obviously we do this the other way around in a lot of ways, that we're here on video, but then we release the audio as a podcast, whereas a lot of the podcasts are generally, you know, released as podcasts, but then there's also a YouTube version of it as well. So you're giving people more opportunities to consume as well. And I know from my point of view, there's a couple of the rugby things where I'll perhaps watch on YouTube, but then they've got maybe a whole YouTube channel. It's not just about that podcast, but then you're into then consuming other things from them. So it's again, it's like feeding. It's almost like a funnel That's good if Christina was here.
Bring that in.
Yeah. Oh, you had to mention that.
Sorry.
Gotta have a funnel somewhere in the
Yeah.
We
life.
can't have a live, yeah.
To be honest, though, as well, Facebook and other places have picked up on this whole podcast thing as well, because they have actually integrated their podcasts into it. So if you've got one, you can integrate your Spotify or whichever platform it's on into your Facebook feed. And if people follow you, then just above the stories, you can see the latest podcast episode. Not rolled out here yet. I think it's just on there, but it will be.
I did see something with Spotify the other day on mine. I didn't really take too much notice what it was, though.
Yeah,
So
some of
maybe
it's
they
still
have
being tested. Maybe you
Yeah.
have got part of the test. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously they've picked up on it, brought it into Facebook as well. So
Yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely think there's been a big rise in it recently.
Mm.
I would never have considered myself to be the type of person to listen to podcasts, purely because whenever I listen to the radio, I always listen to sort of radio stations that play music, and the radio stations, I don't know, that talk a lot, Radio 4 being a prime example, I just kind of say it like this, my dad's radio, and it's really boring and all they do is talk. But actually, maybe I'm turning into my dad. Maybe that's the moral of this story.
You're getting old, dear. So what's your ideal length for a podcast then?
I quite like long podcasts. So I listen to Happy Mum, Happy Baby. That's about anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour. Shagged, Married, Annoyed is normally about 55 minutes-ish to an hour. And Private Parts is usually broken down into 2 parts. So part 1, part 2, about half an hour each. But I do sort of listen to them, like I said, because the podcasts I listen to don't need a huge amount of concentration. You can sort of jump in and out of them, really. I tend to listen to them sort of one after the other. So it's, I don't know, really. I'd say sort of 45 minutes to an hour, probably. But then I'll listen to the next one anyway. So maybe 6 hours.
Whereas I'm more in the 30 to 45 minutes, 30 to 40 minute camp.
Is that do you think that's because of the type of podcast that you listen to?
More how I listen to them, I think. So, because I tend to listen to them on a dog walk.
Yeah.
But, if I'm in the car, I might listen to a couple in a row. So, but I just like, and I think if it's more of a business podcast and you are imparting information and there's things to learn, any longer than that, it's like doing a presentation, back in the day when we do in-room presentations and, sort of learning things at conferences, it's just information overload. Otherwise, there's only so much your brain can absorb. So, yeah, I think for me, 30 to 45 minutes is good.
I think, like you said, if it's specifically educational or something that you really need to take on board, then, yeah, definitely a shorter one, probably 30 to 45. But like I said, I think it depends a little bit.
So this week I was chatting to one of our lovely recruitment clients through Green Umbrella, who was talking about content ideas, and we were more focusing on kind of LinkedIn and what you should post on LinkedIn, and I was kind of saying that you if you post the same thing all the time, doesn't matter what it is. So if you always posted news stories, it would get quite boring. If you always posted job vacancies, it would get quite boring. If you had a podcast, and only ever kind of put an alert out saying next episode, it would get quite boring. So you kind of need to have a cocktail with all these like lovely juicy ingredients and mix them all up. So you would have maybe a news story followed by link to podcast, followed by something more personal, maybe kind of showing you doing something, real people. We talked about whites of eyes. And it kind of led us on to, well, I'm not hugely comfortable in front of the camera. So I could just about manage a selfie, but really nowhere close to doing video yet. So we were talking about whether you were introverts or an extrovert, and basically is social media, is being live, doing a podcast, is that really just the domain of extroverts? So, but I won't tell you kind of where we got to with the conversation just yet. But what do you guys think? Do you have to be an extrovert to do these kind of things?
I think it's so. We were talking before this, weren't we? And we were saying when we did some training with Heidi, I forgot her surname, Heidi.
Mark.
Yeah, that's it. And something that I learned from Heidi is that, to me, naively or not, I thought introverted people were naturally just really shy people, and extroverted people were the sort of people that walk into a room and are quite loud and confident and bubbly. But actually, is what she taught me is that it's more to do with the energy that you get from social situations. So if you're an introverted person, you within social situations that saps your energy, whereas if you're an extroverted person, then you gain energy from being surrounded by people and sort of interacting in that way. So I think that, back to that question, it isn't really the domain of either person. It just depends how you would feel after that situation. So for instance, doing this live show, if you're introverted, then afterwards you might feel a bit tired, you might need to go and take a break, but that doesn't mean that you can't do it. Whereas an extroverted person will come away and feel really buzzing and really happy and like really pumped to get going and complete the next task off their list or something like that. So I don't think it's necessarily, if you're introverted, you can't do video. It just means you can. You just know your personality. You know you're introverted. So don't book something in straight after you've booked a video session or straight after you know that you're filming, I think, anyway. But I don't know.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
You can definitely, sorry. I was going to say, you can definitely be a confident introvert. And if you're confident to go on camera and stuff like that, and then like Emily said, but you're introverted, then you need to allow that downtime and that, inward thinking and whatever to actually get yourself back into a place where you can carry on. I mean, I'm an introvert, certainly, and sometimes I don't have a fear of missing out. I have JOMO sometimes, which is the joy of missing out. I'm quite happy if something gets cancelled at the last minute quite often, because if I've done a lot that week or whatever, then actually sometimes it's too much. I need that time with just me to recharge my batteries as me. But, other people recharge their batteries from those social situations, don't they? So, it just depends on the person.
Yeah,
totally. So, Mark, just to pick on you, because you are typically the quieter one on our
not always
live lunches. So,
On here,
can't get a word in edgeways. So, but so that would lead to an assumption, rightly or wrongly. Oh, there we go. We've got a new
JOMO Jane.
JOMO Jane. So
that's a good one.
Can I bring that on?
Oh yeah.
Oh, do we both try it at the same time? I think then, Jane, you go for it.
I'll do it.
So,
sorry. There we go. JOMO Jane. I like that. I'll keep that one.
Yeah.
That can go in the social snippet this month.
I saw a tweet the other day. I can't remember who sent it, but it basically said the greatest gift you can give to someone is to cancel a Zoom meeting at the last minute. So A, made me chuckle, and B, thought, yep.
That is so true.
So, Mark, what do you think? Because I imagine, are typically not someone that would be kind of, let's do live lunch. You're more kind of, okay.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's a weird thing, isn't it? Because obviously I play in a band and things, but then I still sort of get nervous with that kind of thing. So I think it's similar with something like this, or obviously I've been to networking a lot in the past, and just get that sort of butterfly feeling before you're sort of starting to do something. And so, for me, it's not something that's comfortable. I don't think it ever will be. But
do you get nervous, Mark, before live lunch now, or not? I don't anymore. I used to.
No, not quite as bad. I suppose.
I feel like, again, rightly or wrongly, I sort of forget that we're live. I feel like we're
just shut it out and think there's only 4 of us here, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah.
That's again, really great advice for people to take away. If you are doing, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a live video, whether it's I don't know. So if you're just doing your stories, so we often say that stories is a good way to kind of test out doing video. It's kind of light touch. You sort of dip your toe in the water with it before you commit to doing something really fully. In some ways, it doesn't matter if one person watches or if 1,000 people or tens of thousands of people watch. It doesn't make any difference. It shouldn't really change your approach. So, and for us doing live lunch, it kind of looks like there's just 4 of us here, and we could just be chatting to each other. and we know that there's, not always people there watching it live. It just people will dip in and out on their lunch hour, but people will catch the replay, they'll listen to the podcast. So in theory, just to kind of make us all suddenly really nervous, this digital footprint of us is going to be around for a long time.
Oh, thanks.
But it's true. So, but you could get yourself so worked up about it. But, in some ways, it's kind of a who cares? Everyone's digital footprint is out there. It will be out there forever. We're not being deliberately controversial. We are kind of passing on our expertise from a marketing point of view, but also just as general public, what we consume. So, and I was, so again, I'm an introvert as well. So I, love spending time with friends and family, but equally just need that downtime where I do nothing just to recharge my battery. So I think we're all kind of introverts unite here. But
I don't know what I am, because if it's people that I know,
we've been debating.
If it's people that I know, then I don't feel at all sort of drained in any way. But if I guess similarly to what Mark was saying, if I was going into a situation where I didn't know everybody, I would feel really nervous, and it would really drain me, I think. But so I don't know. Can you be an introverted extrovert? Because maybe that's me.
Yeah, and I think so. If anyone's done the Myers-Briggs personality, the type indicator, it's not a personality test. It's a type indicator. So there's almost a kind of spectrum. So you could be like really heavily introverted, or you could just be slightly, or you could be kind of hovering somewhere in the middle. So yeah, and I'm kind of not too far introverted, but yeah, there's times when I'm just like, everybody needs to back off. I don't like it if there's a lot of kind of stimuli going on. So things like, I don't know, big birthday parties, kids' birthday parties, I just find massively overwhelming because there's like so much noise, so much colour. I'm just, well, and also I'd rather just be in the pub, frankly, but.
Fair enough.
So I think what we're trying to say is, it's, you don't have to feel like, if you are, if you feel like you're an introvert, if you've kind of done those kind of personality assessments that say you're an introvert, it doesn't mean, oh, that's not for me, then I can't do podcasts or live videos. So this kind of digital marketing, you kind of tailor it to suit you. So if you feel like you'd rather do a video based one, then go for it, do a YouTube channel. If you feel like you want audio only because you're not happy on camera, do a podcast.
I'd also really recommend doing it as a group, because like I said it before in this podcast, but like if I were to sit in front of the camera now and think I've got to talk on my own, whether I have notes, whether I don't have notes, whether I have a presentation or not, for even 10 minutes, I'd be so nervous. Whereas coming into this, okay, yes, you could argue that we've done it for a long time, so I'm more used to it. But actually, even the first few episodes, doing it as a group, you don't feel as though all eyes are on you, because everyone else is there and all you can see is everybody else. So perhaps, even if you're not comfortable with video, we obviously recommend video quite a lot. So maybe try it in sort of a similar, like a panel or a similar situation to this, where if you do stutter in your words or you do mind goes blank, someone else who knows you will pick up on that and then can cover for you, basically. Or if you say something stupid and forget.
We've had another comment as well from Nick saying, I'm amazed you guys are chatting at all with all the introverts out in force. But we did get told off. I'm going to just paraphrase Paul by saying Christina would tell us off if we didn't talk. But it's not that introverts are just kind of mute people. They, I think, because I've done quite a bit of reading around this because it's quite up my street. So, often we have things to contribute. But if there are louder people in the room, we won't necessarily fight to have our voice heard. So, and you can often find introverts are slightly more empathetic as well. So we will make time for each other's opinions. So actually doing things like interviews and panel type podcasts work really well, because you will make sure everyone's included in the conversation.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. What do you think about, slightly off topic, but what you were saying there, Amanda, about if you're an introvert, you don't necessarily want to, or you wouldn't try and overpower somebody that was an extrovert that was sort of overbearing a little bit. Would you, you get sort of group interviews is what I'm thinking of. Obviously not at the moment, you don't get those, but do you think that there's something that work, or do you think that they don't work for that exact reason and they don't really give everyone a fair voice or a fair chance?
I mean, ideally, you would always have kind of like a chair, so someone whose job it is. So whether it's Christina or me or whoever, that kind of does, it's like the admin, that does the kind of the intro, the outro, and makes sure everything flows and everyone's included. So it's kind of, and it's the same really, I don't know, if you sit in a board meeting or something, or you have someone whose job it is to make sure that every department, everyone is included. Am I answering what you asked?
Yeah, I think so.
So, I mean, you will often, we're not kind of, now we're picking on extroverts, but there can always be, let's face it, we all know somebody, whether in work or personal life, that is, kind of wants the attention of the room anyway when they walk in, and they do that thing where they talk to the room. So they'll make, sort of pass a comment, and they're kind of looking around for everyone else to see if they've gone, oh, look, that's a funny guy or something.
That's a funny guy. So, yeah, I know what you
talking
mean.
to the room, and you will always get that. But hopefully people are self-aware enough to know. I mean, if they wanted it to be the Emily show, for example, it would be just that. You do your podcast on your own.
Yeah, true.
So,
yeah.
So we've been very. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say one last thing that I'd read recently actually about introverts as well, is that they need time to process and think. So sometimes if you get a lot of people who come out with their opinions or their thoughts or whatever really quickly, that's when the introverts can end up getting sort of quashed down, because actually we need a few more seconds to process what we're going to say before we say it. And by that time, someone else has already talked and the moment's passed. So that's one of the reasons why they quite often end up quieter in a big group situation.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Basically, I'm just quashed down by all of you.
Under the thumb.
You can kind of see the print of the thumb on your head, actually.
No, it's just the light.
That's from us.
Yeah.
It's not from at home. There we go. I feel like we've been quite therapeutic there. And if anybody listening feels, they needed a little boost, especially anyone introvert out there or anyone thinking about doing podcast or YouTube channel or video, hopefully that's been useful for you. Anything else? Anything else we feel we need to share? Anything else we need to add this week?
Well, there's your answer.
But on that bombshell.
The dog was literally sitting by my feet as someone's just knocked at the door. So thanks to Alfie there for having the last word.
Awesome.
So did we have anything else to add?
No.
All right. Well,
like Alfie does.
Still going. So, well, thank you to everyone who's been with us this week. We will be back as usual next Thursday midday. So we'll do our customary wave so Emily can take her screenshot. And we'll see you all again soon. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.